I'm going to give Louise a chance to set up. But I'm Sherilyn Parsons. I'm the Community Development Manager with Community Planning and Economic Development. So I am the largest part of your package, but I do want to let you know that I think we set up this presentation in such a way that it should streamline how you review it. I wanted to just make sure you had all of the documentation to get your eyes on before the meeting, but we won't be going through every single page of that. So we have a PowerPoint. It's about 14 slides, so I'm hoping that we can condense it and not overwhelm you.
Hello, Jen. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'll get started. So what I'm presenting you today is Kalamazoo, the City of Kalamazoo's pre-approved housing plans. We've been working on these for over 2 years. And the concept with these plans was we really wanted to try to accomplish 3 things with having a set of what we're calling pre-approved plans. We wanted to accomplish the sort of a predictability in this climate where costs were steadily rising. We know that time is money, and so when we're thinking about emerging or developers, we wanted to make sure that we were thoughtful of, is there anything the city could do that would help to save some time in getting the much needed housing stock that we need? And one of the strategies that's happening sort of across the the area here is having pre-permitted or pre-approved plans. We also wanted to preserve the character of our neighborhoods. So these plans take into consideration our neighborhoods. They were developed specifically for us and our neighborhoods. And as you get in, you'll see that the character of the modern construction fits that of historical construction. So we were really trying to be mindful about that. And third, we were really focusing on an infill strategy. So we have vacant lots that are owned by the City of Kalamazoo and by Kalamazoo County Land Bank currently. We have quite a few of them. We call them missing teeth in our neighborhoods where there used to be a structure and there is no more. And we wanted a way to allow construction to happen through an infill strategy. So we have, over the last 2+ years, we've done a lot of engagement. We've worked internally with public services, including Public Works, Water Resources, Wastewater. We worked in CPED with our planning and our trades and our zoning. So once again, these were written to our codes, our zoning, our requirements, so that someone could potentially purchase these and kind of treat them like a plug and play. As long as you're building in the right zone, you know that everything fits within it. We worked with the fire marshal, the development community, emerging builders, LISC, who is local here to Kalamazoo, a gentleman named Jim Kuman, who's a principal at Electric Housing, to work through the plans, and then also Jennifer Griffin, who is the principal at J. Griffin Design, and I'll introduce you to her in just 1 second. So my ask basically here, so I'll finish this out and then turn it over to Jen, who will walk you through, hopefully succinctly, all those pages that you have in your package, is that assuming these were to get approved and assuming that these did look in line with what you want to see, as long as the proposed buildings were built to plan, meaning they didn't deviate from the plan, then our hope is that these plans would get reviewed through the Historic Preservation Coordinator for the administrative review, and then approval would be able to come currently through him so that the pre-approval process moves forward. We have a few other departments that also need to do this. So even though the plans are pre-approved, the actual lot that they're being built on and the style of home they choose needs to be just vetted. And so that's what the ask would be. So assuming these were to get approved tonight, we're hoping that authorization would be given to the Historic Preservation for the review and approval for permit. So Jennifer Griffin, who's going to be joining us via voice, is the lead at the founding principal at J. Griffin Design. She is an architect and urban developer or designer with experience working in U.S., Europe, and Central America on a variety of projects. She has spent a great deal of time in our project review committee and talking to community members and other builders to make sure these plans are right. So I welcome her to start to talk through that package and the plans. I'm going to stay up here to control the PowerPoint. Sorry,
Thank you, Sherilyn. I'm sorry, can you all hear me? I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, great, fantastic. And apologies, I can't be there in person. It would have been nice to join you all, but thank you for having me call in. So just to reiterate what Sherilyn had mentioned about the intent of the program, is that this is really, with respect to the design particularly, but this is really to be a tool to support quality infill housing. And the great thing about designing these, and ahead of time with community, with the city, is that we can really ensure that this tool, that this housing that people wanted to select and build aligns with the character and the quality of the neighborhoods that exist in Kalamazoo. Though I'm talking to you, I should say this is very much a team effort. There was many hands that went into to develop these plans and this architecture and the development process as well. So there are, we're coming to you with 8 different building types, and you see them here up on the screen, with a range of sizes and unit types. And each one of these, the city sees as a type that's needed, and they range from everything from a carriage house to a single-story cottage to a narrow house to a more standard two-story house with 3 bedrooms to a standard 4-bedroom house. And then on the lower right-hand corner, the 3 down there, is a front-to-back duplex, stacked duplex, and a side-to-side duplex. Now, each of these types, what we did when we designed them is that working with the city, we realized, and like I said, these are a tool to be used in infill and currently vacant lots in neighborhoods. And what we realized in studying some of the neighborhoods with the city and looking at the properties they have in their land bank is that there are a number of places where there are multiple vacant lots adjacent to each other. There could be a street with 2 or 3 or 4 vacant lots next to each other on the same street. And so what we knew is that we had to build in variety and diversity. And so, Sherilyn, you can switch to the next slide. So what we found, or what we decided, is that each type needed to have options in terms of its exterior architecture, so that if someone finds out that the neighborhood really needs a single-story cottage, that's kind of the product type that the community wants and needs, and if there's 3 vacant lots on the same block, they could provide that product type, they could provide that type of housing, but that it wouldn't look the same. And so so each building type has these 3 different elevation options, exterior elevation options, and they, as you see them up here on the screen, for each type, they're pretty much consistent and pretty much the same. There's slight variations with the craftsman style, but the 3 are the more traditional vernacular elevation. There's a more kind of classical colonial elevation option, and then finally option C is more craftsman style. And all of these we're trying to fit well in terms of the scale, character, and detail that you find in Kalamazoo neighborhoods. I should mention that for each exterior elevation option, there's really only 3 major things that differ, right? The plan's the same. It's really the roof line, and then the front porch, and then sometimes, and only sometimes, the window spacing on the front elevation, and that's just to align with whatever details or porch details and roof eaves details that were applied on that option. Sherilyn, you can skip to the next slide. Now, to help orient you with the packet, I know this is like we were approaching 100 pages, I think, because there's so many different building types and options with each. is that each building type that we submitted, which there are 9, I showed you 8 is because one of the 8 has an alternative or a side-facing option. It's the cottage, because you could apply it to maybe a cottage court condition. So, so 9 total in the packet, and each one has come with 3 different things for each type. There's a page with an example site plan and some 3D models of each elevation option. And then of the 3 elevation options, we provided you with the suite of exterior elevations, so all 4 sides. And then each elevation option has an accompanying pages of exterior details. And what I should mention is the typical residential permit process doesn't necessarily require people to submit this level of detail, but we knew that, especially if any of these product types or any of these houses would be built in historic areas and neighborhoods in Kalamazoo, we wanted to ensure the quality and character was upheld. And so that's why we kind of went to the level of detail we did with these sets. So go ahead, Sherilyn, you can skip to the next page. So what I like to do, like I said, there's 9 of these, but I thought I'd walk you through one, and then the rest are all more or less go by the same cadence, and we can pull up any of the other ones after we walk through this sample one. If you have any questions or want to talk through anything. So the sample one, we just took the standard house. This is the standard 3-bedroom house. The first page of that one, there are site plan diagrams on the top here that show how the house could fit on a corner lot. On the left there, a lot in the middle of a block that was serviced by an alley, and then all the way to the right, the site plan diagram showing kind of a mid-block lot that's accessed from the street and on an alley. These are all just diagrams because the developer would have to, or the builder or owner of the property would have to submit an actual site plan on their specific site. But this kind of lays out some key things about adhering to the zoning requirements, and kind of lays it out clearly for folks, and also kind of it shows them, helps to reiterate that you'd have to reflect the character and the setbacks of the existing neighborhood. So it just kind of shows them that there. And then on the bottom left corner there, it shows the 3 different exterior elevations in a mapping model. Next slide. Then after that, it's just, it goes to the first elevation option. This is option A, all 4 elevations. So front, and the front elevation is in the top left corner. Rear elevation is in the lower left corner. The right elevation, right side elevation, because this could be on a north-facing lot or a south-facing lot, but the right elevation is in the top right corner, and the left elevation is in the lower right corner. So you see all 4 elevations. Next slide. And then the next 2 pages in it is just the suite of details that accompany each elevation. So these are the details for option A of this building type. We have the 2 elevations, the front and rear, simply to allow us to tag and call out those details. So you see the front porch details on there, the column details, the roof eave details. Next slide. And then this is the second page of option A details. So there's an exterior awning over a secondary door, so it shows those details, and the window details as well, to make sure we get quality window placement and return and that sort of thing along the windows. And then next slide. And then it just goes to the option B, same thing that you see for option A. So it's all 4 elevations. Next slide. And then the next 2 slides, I should say, is just the 2 detail sheets that go along with that option. So you can see those 2. And then finally, we get to the 4 elevations of option C, the more craftsman style option. And again, you see the 4 elevations there. And then the next 2 slides are just the accompanying detail sheets that go along with it. So, and so hopefully that orients you to it. That's kind of, I'll pause there and stop with the presentation. And like I said, I'm happy to walk through any of the others or answer any questions that you might have about the design.
Yeah, so one thing I wanted to add here is these plans are still being developed so that someone could actually buy an entire set of A, or an entire set of B, or an entire set of C. For today's meeting, those aren't available, so we had to provide them in the way that we did. So as Jen said, she wanted to sort of set the cadence, so when you're looking at that package, you understand, although there are 80 pages, you're essentially looking at the same variations or deviations between A and B, regardless of whether it's the 3-bedroom or the 4-bedroom. All right. We're opening it up to questions, should there be any.
Yeah, out of the gate, I just had some questions about the project. Who's selling the plans? Is the city selling the plans?
Yep, so what the city's going to do is the city has actually begun to bundle together the permitting prices, and that's essentially what we're going to sell the plans for. So you still have to buy the permits, but they're going to come to you as a bundle, and then you don't have to come in each couple weeks or 3 weeks and wait for the process. Yep.
And then along that same line, I mean, do these plans take into consideration the smaller city lots that are vacant, and so we can actually build on those with these plans?
Yes, excellent question. So another one of the reasons why this took a little bit is because some years ago we found out that a lot of our vacant lots were considered non-conforming to our current code and zoning. So we first had to take a step back and get that right. So now almost all of our vacant lots are considered eligible for these type of plans, and we also have a narrow house built into the plan for some of those skinnier lots that you can't really fit any sort of parking into them. So we did put a narrow house, and we also have a couple of the cottage style home that would fit our both smaller and not quite so deep lots. Yeah, we're really trying to figure out how can we utilize all the parcels that we have.
That's great.
Yeah, great question. Thank you.
I had 2 questions. I was curious, will all new builds in the historic district then be required to follow these plans? Or if someone wanted to build their own home, could they still seek approval from us on their own?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. This is just a tool.
Okay.
It's not going to be mandated as the tool.
Great.
Yep.
No, I think it's an intriguing proposal for sure. My other question was, just looking at all of the specs, there are a lot of details in the renderings, which is great, but I'm wondering, a lot of them seem to use things like turned posts or have a certain number of, panes or certain style in the windows. Is there, I guess, a list of specifications that will be given to builders to, say, you need to have a turned post in this design, or will they just choose whatever kind of post to fill out those details?
Yeah. So I'll let Jen elaborate, but I'll answer in my non-architect way,
Okay.
which is the plans need to be followed the way they're written. And so that is the intent, is we put all the detail so that these are the plans, and this is what we would expect to be built with these plans, and this is what we're permitting. And so if someone were to deviate for some reason that was acceptable, that could happen, but it's no longer pre-approved. They now have to go through the process of doing the individual permits. So Jen, is there anything else you would like to add to that answer?
Yeah, the way we design the details, knowing that there's different suppliers and different manufacturers, is that all these details are simply able to be achieved by just stock lumber. Like you could put these posts together with standard dimensional lumber, and they would achieve. They also align and match a lot of similar column wraps, if you're talking about the front porch and that sort of thing, that are pretty available easily by different manufacturers. So there are different ways that people can achieve these details, and that's what we were trying to build in to make it as easy as possible for the user.
Will there be sort of a materials spec list, or I guess a written checklist, if you will? I am wary of trusting people with just a visual, so I guess I was just seeking maybe a more comprehensive list of styles, elements, I guess.
Yeah, our drawing package, it lists the material for the details that, it lists it as, fiber cement or, PVC, things that are durable so that they can do them. But at the same time, we are developing with the city, and I should mention, we've done a pre-approved building program like this with other cities, another one in the Midwest, in fact. And part of the process of people using this is developing a checklist for the people that are going out there after or while they're constructing they're constructing to just confirm, like, yes, you've met the details and that are on the drawing sheet. So yes, you do get your certificate of occupancy and that sort of thing. Sherilyn, did I miss anything or?
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Jen, because this doesn't do away with the inspections that happen. So those inspections will still take place. This is really sort of that front end tool to get building happening. But yeah, nothing's done away with in this other than the time that sometimes it takes.
So I thought I understood that what was done away with in this was coming to this historic commission for approval.
So what we are asking with these pre-approved is that, yes, the typical steps for permitting, so having to come into our office and fill out for a permit for trades to go out, that would all be bundled within this. That would be the same as if pre-approved and built to plan, this would authorize Luis then to sign the application and approve if it was being built in a historic zone.
And then if there was a deviation, it would come to
Absolutely,
us.
yeah.
I guess I share a little bit of the concern that was previously expressed, but more related to the visuals and the windows, because we often have discussions about what windows look appropriate, and I realize that with the infill, you're going to be using probably vinyl windows or aluminum clad windows even. And I guess our issue has been, one, a materials issue, which is not relevant here, but two, that they still look dimensionally like older windows, not like modern windows. And I couldn't really tell from the materials, and maybe that's just my ignorance and being able to read the schematics. I couldn't really tell if we had covered that, and maybe, Louis, you can talk about that, whether we cover the window dimensions that historic prefers.
Sorry, this microphone is not the best. Wanted to touch on two things. As Jen was just saying, these are the plans, and as Sherilyn was saying, so where it says turned post, there's not room for interpretation. So they give all of the specs about how the capitals on the columns will look. The columns will be round, so they will not be milled to have designs in them. If they wanted to do that, they come back here. These are the plans to be followed to the letter, completely. So I know that this is a lot of information to be thrown at, and that's why I wanted to have Jen on the call as well, because just as you said to Dana, reading blueprints can take time to get acquainted with as well.
Yeah.
That's just the nature of the beast, right? These plans do have the detail, though, that is requisite for a building. So I just wanted to address that first, both Christy and Dana's concern. When we speak about dimensions of windows being historically appropriate, I think probably what we're referring to are a couple things. First would be, I guess, the fenestration pattern on the building, how many times they're occurring would be the first thing I would consider. The next thing would be probably like the relation of glass to the actual sash would be another thing. And then just saying size, I struggle with, because there's going to be a variety of window sizes on buildings. Not necessarily related to size, but style of operation would be another thing that we look at. And looking at the drawings, they appear to be double or single hung windows, correct, on all of these, which is a predominant window style that we have here in the city of Kalamazoo. Excuse me. There are 2-over-1 or 2 light over single light windows, and then it looks like there are also some 1-over-1 windows, which again are predominant. We see those all over here in the historic houses in the city of Kalamazoo. There's also trim on these, which is what we would see, or casing on the outside of the windows, which is what we would see. Again, I don't know the exact ratio of the glass to the frame, but looking at them on these drawings, and as I stated, I think in my report, or if I didn't, I can speak to it, they do look like they're appropriately sized. You also just spoke to the fact that, you know, these need to be differentiated in some way, and you addressed the material, it's immaterial what the materials are in this case to some degree. So that's another big consideration, I think, as well.
Jen, anything you'd like to add on?
Yeah, I mean, we were looking at all, so though these could be used in non-historic styles, the predominant kind of character of Kalamazoo and a lot of the neighborhoods, both in historic but also the non-historic neighborhoods we're looking at, are more traditional in nature. And so when we were designing these, we were looking at the proportions and trying to adhere to them so that they would fit seamlessly in them. It was one of those that these are, because for other cities, we've done more modern versions of these, have options for something that's more modern. And this is something that we were very intentional of being much more traditional, given the character of the neighborhoods that existed in Kalamazoo. So we both the rhythm and the spacing and the proportions to the angle of the roof, we were very intentional about it so that they would fit well into the Kalamazoo's neighborhood.
And it's important to note there, just to tag on with what Jen was just saying, the reason why that was so important to us is also because where, as mentioned in infill strategy, where the lots are really demand this look, this character.
Yeah, I think I would like to express the same concerns that we've had earlier in terms of the materials that are being used in particular, because that's something that our historic guidelines are very clear about, and we've had to turn certain proposals down because they don't meet those guidelines. So now I hear PVC, I hear some other, vinyl windows, some other alternative products, which may not necessarily be a bad thing. I'm not saying it, but how does that affect, let's say, I have a house in the historic district and I have to keep my wood siding and my wood windows, and then this house goes in, boom, next to me, it has all these new products, and I'm still strapped with the financial burden of trying to do the original windows. Affect that neighborhood as a whole, in the historic section in particular?
Yeah, so I'll answer it in my terms, and then I'll pass it off to my other colleagues here. So one of the things that we did have conversations specific to that is these are being constructed as modern homes. They are not historic homes. However, the thought really for me and sort of what I chimed in is, if I drove through the neighborhood, just sort of drove through it, I don't want to be like, oh, that was built 2 years ago, or that it's just, oh wow, there's just a cohesiveness and a feel to this neighborhood that just feels great. And so we did really keep in mind more of that it didn't stick out, that it fit in, it had the same roof lines and stuff like that. So I know you're specific at asking to materials, so to answer that more technically, I need to give it back to Jen.
I would agree with what you said. From what I've seen, it's not like your average person is going to drive by and say, oh my God. But yet at the same time, we're turning one person down because they need to use the materials that meet the guidelines, yet we're allowing somebody who's building new to do this other thing. And that's the only concern that really came to mind.
Yeah, that is a tough one. Modern versus historic. There is a dancer. Jen, anything you want to add?
Louise, I'll ask for you to fill in here a little bit, because but I was under the understanding that obviously with the the use of modern materials, especially when it's new construction in a historic district, is allowed and helps to differentiate, though it might look in the same character and design and proportion of a historic wood window, say. You could still achieve that with the new materiality, and that new materiality will help distinguish so there's no confusion over it being a 100-year-old house or a new construction house, but that there's still cohesiveness in the character and it still fits within the historic neighborhood. Please correct me if I'm wrong, right? I think that's where we landed with the materials in the new construction of these.
Yeah, so I do, this was in my report as well, and this is number 9 of the Secretary of the Interior standards, and this is something that we have no option but to follow and look to when we are making decisions regarding these things. I agree that these become interesting decisions to make because we look at historic buildings all the time, and it's not very often that we are looking at new builds. Number 9 says that new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials, which these are infill lots, so we don't need to concern ourselves with the destruction of historic materials that characterize the property. The second part, I think, is the most important, though, saying that the new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible. That's kind of a duality there, saying that it should be differentiated, but it should also be compatible. It shall be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. First, I would like to say that the materiality is not considered under compatibility in the standard number 9. And I think that one of the easiest ways to achieve the differentiation, it'd be different if we were looking at a historic building, I believe, in my opinion, but these are new builds. As Sherilyn pointed out, and I guess one of my concerns that I always have as a preservationist and that I hear from other folks is that, hey, we had someone come in and build new things exactly like the old ones. It makes it hard for future generations to be able to distinguish the old versus the new. When we look at the compatibilities, though, that are mentioned in number 9, such as massing, size, scale, and architectural features, in order to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment, we have the variety with the 3 alternates that are proposed in these plans. The massing is also achievable through the number of different styles that are offered up. The scale, you can look kind of related to the massing and the size as well, and the architectural features of traditional, colonial, or vernacular colonial, and then craftsman, as I stated in my report, do align themselves pretty well with the span of time that we mostly concern ourselves with in the historic districts. For the sake of discussion now, I think that we can comfortably say that that span of time is from the late to middle 1800s through, kind of the middle 1900s, but generally we don't get up to the 1950s. So that's when those styles would have been kind of at the height of their popularity. I know that I went kind of further than your question, Stuckey, but I think that a lot of them can be answered through looking at the
Well, I think maybe I need to reword my question a little better because I think the design is fine. I think it's wonderful that they're actually working with the city to say, hey, we have this small lot. Why can't we put a small house on it? No brainer. These are good things. My concern is in now all of a sudden all these new houses are coming in with modern materials, which is what we should build with, right? We're building in 2024, not, 1724. But now here I'm a homeowner and I'm thinking, well, shoots, if I just let that porch go and it falls down, then I can build it with the Trex like I want to anyway, instead of repairing it now while it needs it and it can be repaired. Like, is this going to open the floodgates for a complete change of maybe attitude or way of looking at, like, hey, everything's modern, so modern materials all the way, and where we had people in that wanted to cover up the siding because they didn't want to paint anymore, these kind of things, right? Is that going to then be like, well, he's got vinyl and it's the standard now, so let's tear off the wood-clad siding that really only needs repair to put on, you see what I'm saying? That's more where I'm driving at, like, and maybe that's something that will be monitored by you by doing the executive approval? I mean, I don't know, how do you, or the other thing of, hey, it's supposed to be a round post, but I'm the carpenter and I put up a square one and say, who's going to notice? Unless there's some real stringent, catches there. So that's kind of what I'm getting at is
Yep, so I want to make sure, and I saw that you wanted to say something, Jimmy, so I'll let you pop in a second. But we are talking about what you were bringing up there, Stuckey, were three different things, and I want to make sure that we are mindful of that we are talking about now. Looking at how we slot into the pre-approved housing plan for an infill strategy that's being developed by the city. My understanding, and Sherilyn can also speak to this, but it's in the report as well. This is not meant to come in and tear down buildings. This is for infill, so I want to put that, if that's a concern as well. The pre-approval process does not do away with the inspections, as Sherilyn said. So, and we haven't crossed this bridge yet, but if one of these went up and I went out to the property and inspected it and noticed something was different, I'm not clairvoyant, but my guess is what would happen would be that it would come to the Historic District Commission because they did not follow the plans in execution. And if they submitted something different, then I would bring it to the Historic District Commission because that does not align with what the pre-approval process is. When we speak about precedent-setting decisions, I think that none of the decisions that are made by this commission are precedent-setting. So I want that to be something that we also keep in mind. It's also important to consider that you talked about a porch being let go through neglect. There are different tools to address when a property has been actively neglected and then they try to opt for demolition, either wholesale demolition of the property or partial demolition. I think, too, that the conversation of comparing a historic building to a modern build building, you really bring up apples and oranges, and we, I guess, know as the commission, too, that people are more than welcome to bring forth any proposal on a building that they would like to. So if someone did want to build a porch out of Trex, which is one of the cases that came up tonight, they did bring that forward. That would need to come to the commission. But if someone wanted to rebuild the porch with wood, that could be administratively approved because it aligns not only with the Secretary of the Interior standards, but also our local historic standards and guidelines. I think then if we look at the Secretary of the Interior standard number 3, each property shall be recognized as a physical record of its time, place, and use, and changes that create a false sense of historical development, such as adding conjectural features or architectural elements from other buildings, shall not be undertaken. Again, this does not deal with materiality, but I think that the record of its time is why we look at historic buildings and say, that's why these features are here and we are protecting them. That's why putting the vinyl siding onto an old building is different than putting it onto a new building. That's why the predominant coverage of my conversation in my report was looking at number 9 because it does deal with the construction of new buildings and how they respect the architectural or just the built environment that surrounds it with the historic buildings.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I appreciated that insight in the packet, and the fear of like a slippery slope thing, I guess I don't share because we're still bound by the standards for future proposals, whether it's these properties or any others. Like, let's say, I think you were implying like maybe a neighbor, not part of this proposal here, but a neighbor says, down the street they got to use vinyl siding. But still they would have to come to us and we would say we're bound by the standards. So, and this is a very different case, as Louis said. So I did have a question though, separately, or it's somewhat related, but I wondered, just for my own clarity, who the intended buyers of these properties are. Is it like development companies that would be purchasing these, or are they individual families that have some sort of a voucher or funding already established?
Yeah, so far we're working, I call him the emerging builder. The biggest desire for these are from our neighborhood builders who want to build for neighbors, family, people they know, and there's just not enough units. So we are not attracting large developers to come in and buy a random bundle of lots to put these up. These plans, as mentioned, are very thoughtful. They're not skimpy plans in any way. So as far as the fear of all of a sudden being left with something that we're all saying, what in the world did we do? We made sure that that is not part of the equation at all. So I don't think we really run a risk of a developer coming and saying, these are such a sweet deal, I'm gonna, build them and try to sell them. So no, we're not looking to, and they all are in response to the housing types that is indicated in the most recent county housing plan that we need based on our demographics of families. So we need all of these based on the single family person all the way up to the larger.
In other words, these aren't for like short-term rental properties.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, they're not they're not designed that way.
Okay.
Yeah, they're designed to stand the test of time.
Thank you.
I have a question. In the materials that were provided to us, there's a statement, any unpermitted deviations from the plans will not be considered for pre-approval and will be brought back to the Historic District Commission.
Yep.
So what would permitted deviations be?
So the only,
That's
and
just-
the biggest one that I would say is that either the I don't want to say proprietary name, but fiber cement siding or vinyl siding would be the permitted alternate to the fiber cement siding. Otherwise, when I'm looking at this, there's no permitted deviations from the plans that would be allowable.
So that refers to a decision that the Historic District Coordinator makes. Right.
Will you clarify one more time? Sorry.
So a difference between a permitted deviation and an unpermitted deviation with respect to us
Yes. No,
is something
I got what
that
you're
that the Historic
No.
Coordinator would make.
Yep. So I guess that I can say right now, for the sake of what you guys are hearing, right, the only one that you would anticipate, and it's built into the plans, is that the vinyl is the alternate for the fiber cement siding. If other deviations were to be brought up, then I would bring them to you. I think that this does open us up for something that's kind of weird, because someone could say, hey, I'm going to put wood windows into it. Do I think that that's realistically going to happen? Probably not. But even if they did, I would bring it back then. So the only one that's not, I guess, all the way solidly addressed is the siding. There's fiber cement here, but the vinyl is the other predominant siding type. So those are the two that would be, I understand what you're saying, and I would not be making audibles on this as I saw fit.
So, and I guess my concern is not with the current Historic District Coordinator, whose skill and knowledge and everything that you've done so far has been, really very impressive. But people change, and I might not feel the same way about the next Historic District Coordinator.
Yep. And I agree that there is obviously institutional turnover that would happen. So, approving these as drawn and as presented, then if that's the smartest choice then. And if things change in the future, then we can address those as those happen. But they were brought forward by Sherilyn and Jen as presented here in the plans. So, yes.
I was going to just make two comments. I see what you're saying, Stuckey, but I really feel like we have all these tools in this framework that will just keep that kind of slippery slope at bay. And the easy answer is the reason they can use vinyl or fiberboard is because it's new construction, and you have a historic home, and we have to protect that historic home. And then I had one other set of questions. Is there a financial benefit for new builders on this? Does this cut out a lot of costs? Have you done estimates on building costs, and affordability of this? Is this better in that way as well, other than the permitting? Or?
So we're building in predictability. which is a cost savings. To be able to quantify it to you, I can't really quantify it right this second. Although in talking with the developers, builders, I'm sorry, I'm using those interchangeably. One of the things that they said is, if they're thinking they're ready to go in 3 weeks and something happens and their plan gets hung up and it's now 6 weeks, that drastically changes the cost in this time where, especially when interest rates were going just like, seriously, we're 3 points different now. And so they were really saying, if you could build in predictability with us, that would be something that then we know with our financing that we can go in and we know, I buy these, the process is it's going to take, 4 days to get my inspection, and I'm ready to rock and roll. That's a huge savings. So the biggest cost savings is that predictability. We're building in predictability.
Sherilyn, I can add to that too. The other big thing is my time and materials. Like architects, particularly, I think it's much more particular in these historic neighborhoods, right? If you look at any small or mid-scale developer, right, they have to spend the overhead to develop plans. And when you're building in a neighborhood, a lot of developers out there are used to developing in much wider suburban-style lots. But what we found both in Kalamazoo and the other communities we've worked in for these pre-approved plans is that there's not a whole lot of stock plans out there for these more traditional building types that fit on narrow lots and that fit the character. And so we're saving the developer or just a community member who wants to infill on a lot because they care about the neighborhood. We're saving them all that overhead and time in developing plans, because these would be like custom designs, for me as an architect, which can be pretty pricey. So we're able to provide that tool and that cost savings in providing those quality designs that are approved to those folks.
Excellent point, Jen. I had sort of forgot about that approval I made.
I had just, I guess, one comment for the commissioners and then 2 questions. I do think that this might be a real gift as a tool for our neighborhoods for new builds, because there are definitely some new builds on some places that have been torn down that are just real eyesores in my opinion. So I think it could be a really useful kind of like meeting halfway in the middle to get more population back in our neighborhoods and to kind of restore those streetscapes in a slightly more modern way. So 2 questions pertaining to the siding. Will the siding be required to be a smooth side? Is that a requirement that we have new builds? You're not allowed to have a foot wood grain. Is that correct? I'm just wondering if there's a specification in there.
I'll bounce that back to Jen for the.
Oh yeah, our drawings don't specify the finish to the fiber cement siding.
Should we though? I guess that's a question for Luis or the commission. Isn't there something written though that new builds are supposed to have smooth siding?
I guess again, in my opinion, when I look at this holistically and think about it, and this is me leaning pretty heavy onto the standards from the Secretary of the Interior, it's further differentiation, I guess. And if we look at the integrity of a property, they tell you, or the character of a property, they tell you that you can evaluate it in 3 ways: from the street level, from arm's length, and then pretty much by having your nose up to it. I don't think that you really start to see that grain that you're referring to until you're at arm's length at best, depending on your eyesight, or nose length at worst. Looking at the project too overall, I guess all of these things they're not specified in there like Jen just said. Having the further differentiation is something that's very strongly listed in number 10, and truly only 9 and 10 speak to new builds. I can pull up our local ones because I don't have it in front of me right now, but I did put it into my report, so I guess I can allude to it. when it comes down to the use of vinyl or synthetic siding, it will be considered for new construction as a way of differentiating it from historic houses. This is from our local stuff. Of course, it is the discretion of the new owner and the builder to propose a siding for the project, and that's the length of it that is stated in our local standards and guidelines. But that is a good question. And I hope I answered it.
I think you did. I guess we as a commission could maybe make that qualification if we felt necessary. And then my other question, I guess, is about the maintenance of the new vinyl or whatever kind of siding. I'm specifically trying to ask, like, there was a new construction build on Bellevue, I think, and the siding was just popping off of that thing for years. So I guess I'm just wondering, is there any checkpoint, maybe this is a question for Luis, any checkpoint in just making sure that, I don't know, things stay together, things stay maintained? Just because it's new construction doesn't mean it's going to be well done or with quality materials, I guess is my
I want to make sure,
concern.
too, that we're mindful, because we don't necessarily ask that question about old properties, and I want to retain the impartiality that we have. There's not a workmanship clause in the historic district standards and guidelines, and once someone is going to be erecting a property, it's their responsibility to make sure that it's put together. If siding is popping off, it would not be something that would be a violation underneath our code, but having siding falling off would be a violation somewhere in the city, so it would need to be handled in that capacity. You know, we don't look at the quality of materials for anything that we do ever. So if someone was building a porch and they found the wood on the beach, they would still be able to build it out of that. And I think that we all know that there are certain materials that are going to hold up better than others, and that's fine. I think that we also know that oftentimes we try to let people know that so they don't need to be rebuilding it often, but the maintenance of the property after the construction would be the responsibility of the owner. And I know that the property that you were referencing did finally get it attached in an appropriate way where it did not fall off anymore. And, so, yeah.
I just had one more comment, and I just think this is such a cool project because a lot of the homes that we're protecting and talking about were originally kit homes and mail order homes made from blueprints just like this, 100 years ago. And it's kind of cool to see the same kind of thing coming and infilling next to it. And I'm imagining now, like 100 years from now, people looking at these houses and then holding them to the standards. So yeah, that's it.
Yes, thank you for that. I have to extend that thank you to Jennifer. I mean, she has really thrown herself into the city of Kalamazoo and has been so thoughtful with these plans and listening to all the comments, going to all of our departments and listening to all of the concerns. And so, Jen, you're not here, but if you were, I'm publicly acknowledging your magic. Thank you.
Thanks, Sherilyn. Like I said, it was a team effort. There were a lot of people that put a lot of hard work trying to get these right. So,
Are there any more comments? Then if there's no more comments, could someone put together a motion to approve as presented?
I'll move to approve the infill construction project or plans, pre-approval plans, as presented, and as they are in accordance with Secretary of Interior standards, numbers 9 and 10, relevant to new additions and new construction.
I'll second the motion.
Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Christy?
yes.
Dana?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me.
So it passed, and I'll be in touch with the applicants tomorrow. Thank you, Jen, for joining us.
thank you all.
Yep.
And then we're moving on to, looks like 808 West South Street.
I don't see the applicant here for that right now, so we're going to move that to the bottom of the agenda, and we're going to move on to 723 McCourty, the next item of business. I'm just going to get moved back around, but you guys can begin right now. So
Hi, I'm Peter Barnard. We had the most expensive parents' weekend ever back in 2018. My son came to Kalamazoo College, and we purchased a house on Village. We've subsequently, this past year, purchased 2 houses, one on Lovell and one on McCourty, and so we're talking about McCourty today. It's kind of a problem child in that it and Luis has been there, I think, a couple of times at least. The former owner did some work. There were some stop work orders that happened, and so we're kind of taking it back down to studs and redoing it the right way, getting the right permits, all that kind of stuff. But for today, the issue, really 2 small issues, the front door and a rear window. As far as the window, it's rear facing, so not visible from the front of the property. Currently, there's a vinyl window in there, but when we purchased the property, we had the inspectors come in, and they said that we needed appropriate egress, and it was too small a window for that. So what we're hoping to do is to replace that window with a wooden window that does have appropriate egress. And so hopefully in your packet you got the specs on that window. So that's what we're hoping to do back there. Any questions that I can answer in that regard? Okay, the front door is it's a metal door. It has some places where locks have been attached to it, and bolts are torn off and all that kind of stuff. So what we're hoping to do, and unfortunately I don't have the specs for where we're trying to go, but what we're trying to do is go to the Heritage Company and replace that metal door with a period appropriate door that would match the architectural kind of design of the house. So perhaps I need to come back later with the specific door that we're hoping to install, but for the purposes of this discussion, we want to move towards a wood door that's more in character with the nature of the house and the neighborhood. So that's where we are.
Yeah, I appreciate you tackling the project. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
The window in the rear of the house is the 2nd-story window, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And I mean, just to be upfront about everything, I mean, we do have there is a window on the 1st floor that is not original to the house, in the very back, and there's also one on the side, which is for the bathroom that's not original, but those were there when we purchased the house. We do have 8 original windows that we're reworking right now, so they will be as they were.
And so you would be just replacing, or would you be widening the hole for that window as well?
We would have to widen the hole for that. When we had to take all the drywall down to get to the point where we could actually do all the requisite inspections, and clearly they had rebuilt it smaller than it was originally. So so we are making it larger, but primarily for the egress, not for any other real purpose.
Great. On the door, this is just a comment, but if you're working with Heritage Company for something that's of the time period and stuff, is that something we could have Luis, you just administratively approve so he doesn't have to come back, since, yes, that seems to be the right direction to go.
Yep.
Okay. All right. If there's no other questions or comments, would someone do a motion to approve?
I move to approve the proposed work as it complies with the Secretary of Interior Standards 1, 2, and 9.
Could you add to that what we just said?
With Luis approving administratively the door that matches, or approved door.
I second.
Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Christy,
Yes.
Dana,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
James.
Yes.
So that passed, Peter, and I'll be in touch with you tomorrow. I'm not sure if I'll get the paperwork all put together and sent out to you tomorrow, but we can at least touch base, and then I'll send you the certificate of appropriateness for the work, and I'll mail it to you as well. So I'm not sure when the mailed copy will get to you, but we'll be in touch.
Sounds great, yeah. We'll stay in touch and make sure we're doing it, the right way.
Awesome.
So
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you for everything.
Let's move on to the 712 Willard, if you're here.
Good evening. My name is Tony Clark. I am the owner of 712 Willard. Today I'm here to talk about changes or restoration of the porch for the property. I should note that we have owned property for a couple of years now, and it's been a very slow and arduous process to restore it. Various citations against the property existed before we purchased it, and it has been our focus to remediate those citations so that we can effectively move forward with the restoration of the property. One of the items in that citation is addressing the porch. There have been numerous issues with it, including some upper structural damage due to water damage over the years. From a long-term stability standpoint, the columns and the railings and the porch need to be addressed. As such, as part of our investigation into the condition of the porch, our center focus was to restore the integrity of the upper portion of the porch and then address the columns. And primarily the issue that we came to was that the two of the columns are in very, very poor shape. They have extensive rotting to them to the point where I do not believe that they can be repaired. They must be replaced. And a third column, center in the above image, was replaced at one point in time and does not, one, match the other columns, and two, is not appropriately sized to match the other columns. In other words, it's smaller than what should be there. As such, 3 of the 4 columns should be replaced. The 4th column is in okay condition, but from our standpoint, the idea is that we should replace all of the columns so that they match and are structurally sound to support the porch long term. So our proposal, as presented, was to replace those columns with something that is as close as we could find to the what we consider to be the existing columns, which is the ones that the half columns against the existing wall, and then the 3 that we can identify as matching to those columns as well. In addition to that, beyond that, we are going to replace the railings, because the railings that are there are obviously not original to the structure and were replaced by the previous owner at some point in time. And we would also like to restore the spandrels and the other historical details which are now missing from the property as well.
What are you using to determine your new railings and your finials and decorative features, I guess?
I have looked at other houses in the neighborhood and determined that the closest property that we could find that matched what we think was there originally is 200 Elm Street. So 200 Elm Street has very close features both from a spandrel standpoint and from a railing standpoint. and from a staircase standpoint, that would appropriately match the house.
And then you're doing that yourself? Or you're,
Yes.
so you'll be buying something that's like a stock material that comes as close as you can
As
to that?
close as we can, yes. Mhm. At this point in time, we had not identified the material yet because we were still looking to identify the style and the characteristic that we wanted to model against. So again, 200 Elm Street is as close as we have been able to identify. So that should be available to you to review.
I had a question. For
Yes.
the spindle style, are you looking at updating that sort of box knee wall on the front, like where the porch is, or are you just talking about replacing the spindles in the railing area?
There are no spindles or railings other than the staircase there. So everything would be new. And obviously, the railings and the spandrels would be chosen to coordinate with themselves, of course.
Are the columns that you're looking to replace, are they wood columns?
I'm sorry.
Are they wooden columns, the ones you're
Yes,
looking to
they are
replace?
wooden
Okay.
columns, yes.
Okay.
You don't have currently right now any pictures of what those styles would look like?
Which style?
Like for the columns or the,
Yes, there was, I believe.
oh, that's the new,
What is shown there, the closest one to the left is a new column. The one in the middle is an existing original column. Now, because of the repair work that we had to do, we were forced to proactively replace those columns with the understanding that we may, obviously, we still need approval for that. But the point here is that this gives you a clear comparison of the new column and the old column together to show how well we were able to identify and match them.
And just to clarify, all of the 4 columns will now match each other, given that one of the
Currently,
3
right
was-
now, 3 of the 4 columns
Right.
have been replaced.
Okay. The 4th one will match the other
The
3?
4th one, we already have identified the 4th one. The ones that we will have to acquire materials for and replace are the half columns, which go against the wall. Those are not structural. They're just obviously decorative. But those will also be replaced to match. So we will have all columns and all half columns are matching.
Or do you keep the ones that are against the house as the original? So I'm just thinking, like, if he's going to be removing all of the original ones, that way there's still something original left, if anyone would ever want to replicate them. I don't know, just throwing that out there.
I don't know if that would bother me as much. I mean, it'd be an easy thing to take one of those columns and rip it in half and boom, there you
Correct.
got your 2 and everything matches.
Correct.
I could go either way personally on that.
I mean, at least look at the pictures because I think, from a sidewall perspective, it would be very hard to, be able to tell the difference without, again, having an eagle eye and looking at it very closely. So you're right, you could retain the half wall columns there as an original architectural detail. I don't mind that. Again, that's the commission's decision there. Obviously, less work for me, so.
It looks like the new columns would allow for taller railing on the fence as well,
Correct.
which brings it to code, whereas it was probably
Yes,
not up to code before.
yes, you could bring it to code, but that was also part of my ask to the commission was, again, I am very cognizant of the styling and the other houses around, and I also know that some of the new construction in that street does have lower railings which match the other historical homes on that street. So I am very willing to and would like to pursue, the railing height as appropriate for the period of those homes.
It's my understanding generally that the exterior railing heights on porches were tied to the windows. So
That is
if there's a lower window, there's
is
a
correct.
shorter.
And that is
Is
correct.
that-
There
is that
is a
correct,
lower
Luis?
window on that front of the home. So
It's a-
yes, I'm aware of that.
It's a pretty good like general rule to look at. I think when we're trying to conceptualize here what we're looking at, if Tony wanted to ask for the rail to be higher, if it was not already higher, that would be something I would bring to the commission. We can look at rail height waivers to make sure that we achieve the lower height, is the first point. This window, Dana, like what you just brought up, is pretty low. I want to say the sill is like 29 or 30 inches or something.
It's lower than that. It's
Okay.
about 26 inches.
So it is low, and I think that there can be maybe some wiggle room afforded to, in that area, but you are right that it was, for the most part, tied into the bottom sill of the window. And I just wanted to clear that up as well.
Then would the actual design details of the railing and all that stuff be an administrative approval?
So the current standards and guidelines for Kalamazoo, we don't have one that we know that we need to replicate. It's been taken off. The original or an old one was taken off. We don't know what the original looked like, but I think that we can reasonably surmise that this is not the original railing on this porch. There are standards that are spelled out right now in the local historic district standards and guidelines that say that a new railing just needs to be built with a top and bottom rail with the spindles located in between the rails. So those are things that are in the standards and they can be administratively approved. I think the biggest concern that I had with this was looking at the height of the rail as well for it all. And the columns are here too, so.
I had just one more question. If you're rebuilding the stairs and the railings there, are you going to widen the steps at all? It looks like they probably were originally wider with the way.
That is correct, yes.
I was curious if you were doing that or
And
not.
this is exactly why I mentioned 200 Elm Street, because it does have a wider stairs. Also because if you look at the picture where the columns are located, the stairs are narrower than that, and they would have originally been wider. So yes, the intention is to widen the staircase to match the columns and the overhang there, yes.
Okay, if there's no more comments, does anyone want to make a motion to approve?
Just trying to get back to the appropriate language.
Okay.
All right, I will make a motion to approve a certificate of appropriateness for the work as described in this application as it complies with the standards 1, 2, and 10.
Thank you for that. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Right, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Christy,
Yes.
Dana,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
James.
Yes.
So it passed, and I'll just be in touch with you tomorrow, Tony, to I guess I don't know if I'll get the paperwork out tomorrow, but I'll be in touch by the end of the week to send you over the certificate of appropriateness, and then if we need to continue talking about it, feel free to reach.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Moving on to 151 Prospect.
Hi, I'm Matt Nielsen. Just looking to swap out a door on the back of the house. It's pretty straightforward. The existing door, it's an in-swinging door right hand. I'm going to swap it to have an out-swinging left hand, because on the inside of the house there are 3 doors opening in one area: bathroom, top of the basement, and then the exterior door. It's going to be the same size, pre-hung, look about the same way with the half light. That's the project.
it doesn't look like this is the original door. Is that correct, to the house?
I think that it might be the original door. So in the images, the white one, they're all kind of the same color, but the white one on the outside is a storm.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the one on the inside, I don't know where the feedback is coming from. This house was built in, I have it in my report somewhere, but the early 1900s, and I have a feeling that that was the original door that was put onto the house for the rear. That's the reason that I brought it to the commission, is it's either original to the property or it was put in, it looks to me very close to the original construction of the property. The storm door is not original though.
Is there a reason you just don't change the handing on the door?
Well, part of it's also, it's pretty drafty. So I want to get the whole sill and just reset with a better hung door.
So
The old door handle is also one that has, I don't know how many,
Mhm.
you would have to take a new door handle, the way I understand it. And I don't think it can just flip around. It's also been ripped off, so that the existing door handle is dysfunctional and broken.
So what you want to do is put in a pre-hung new home construction door.
Yeah.
Just so we're all on the same page, what Matt was just referring to is that it seems that there's some issues with the jamb of the door. I think when I visited the home, right, it's not closing all the way, and that's what's leading to the drafts. There's an issue Stuckey just referred to, why don't we move the handle around? The old hardware is not amenable to changing that around, and it's dysfunctional. Just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page.
So this door is not salvageable, and, I mean, without great effort. Yeah.
I think salvageability is one of the things that we're looking at. We're also looking at, does this door truly have character-defining features for this property? It's at the rear of the property. It's not the main entrance. It's one of multiple doors. I concluded that it is not a character-defining feature, and they shouldn't necessarily be conflated with originality or age. Also, we're always striving for the contemporary efficient use of the property, and it sounds to me as though from the applicant, this is not really lending itself very much to contemporary use of the property anymore with the direction of the swing.
And then I guess my other question is, the door that you're replacing it with, does it look similar or, similar materials, all that?
Yeah, from Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever, they've got some options that are fiberglass, some that are wood. They've got the same half light, same kind of window style. It's just a difference of a few $100s if you do fiberglass or wood.
Okay.
But I'd be fine to do either one.
I'll speak for myself that I would prefer wood so that it maintains the historic character, even though it is in the back of the house. I think overall it adds, a door is a prominent feature, even if it's hidden. So for me, I would prefer wood.
I would move that we approve the proposal as worded, option for, do we actually? Yeah, with, as we noted it, wood door with similar lighting pattern.
I'll second the motion.
Can we have a roll call vote on that, please?
Christy?
Yes.
Dana?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
So that's passed, and I'll be in touch with you tomorrow. I'm not sure when I'll get the paperwork out, but we'll be in touch, so.
Okay.
Awesome,
great.
thanks so much, Matt.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Guys, if we're gonna talk, please make sure that you speak into the microphone, just for transparency's sake, obviously. The last applicant is not here tonight. So that leaves us with a couple options. Obviously, this has already been postponed once, this hearing. So we need to be mindful of that when looking at our window of opportunity to be able to approve this, because there's this 60-day window of looking, so by the time it came forward to our next meeting, we'd be outside of that window. In order to extend that window, we need to make sure that there is written consent between both the applicant and either myself or you all. So that's just something I wanted everyone to keep in mind as we move forward.
Would we have to make a motion on that now?
Well, just 1 second. So the applicant isn't here, so we can't get the applicant's consent.
But that's the one that we were short. We didn't have enough people, and they were here. Is that correct? And now they're not here, but we are.
That has no bearing on the situation whatsoever. It's not spelled out in any of the laws in that way. So
Yeah.
just to say, like, if it flip-flopped, it doesn't extend the time. Dana is right that they're not here, so we cannot ask them right now if they consent to postponing. So, yes.
So we have to rule on it.
I think
I mean,
for...
well, if we don't, if we don't do anything, it's automatically approved? Is that
after
it?
60 days. So I just want to be clear
Okay.
that, so there is a motion that is made tonight. You could elect, without knowing what they would say, to say, we want to postpone, and I can reach out to the applicant and say, hey, do you want to come back? But that is not as sure as ruling on it tonight. Or there's the option for the motions. And that is at your guys' discretion, what you want to do with this after looking at the application.
And I wanted to interject here and say that I'll be recusing myself from voting on this, as I was a former resident at the property and know the applicant well.
So does that mean that all 4 of us have to agree?
There would need to be, yes, now that it brings it down to the quorum, there would need to be a unanimous vote on it.
All right, well, just to state the obvious, this is a retroactive application, so the work's already been done. I don't know what a denial would be.
So the big hangup is the deck is made out of a synthetic wood instead of pressure treated or cypress or cedar.
So I don't think that there's necessarily any hang-up, and I do want to backpedal to what Dana just said, that retroactive reviews are looked at, and I know that this can kind of be a little bit of a thought exercise, but in order to retain impartiality, retroactive reviews are looked at as though the work has not been completed. I know that we're looking at a picture right now of the work that has been completed, but that is what we're supposed to be looking at. I know that, again, it's a confusing thing. Second, the reason that I brought this to the commission is because it's a second-story deck that's going up, and if there were pictures that showed me, hey, there was a second-story deck here before and they built it to be the same, I would not have brought this to the commission, because they're using mostly pictorial evidence to say we're building back a feature that is not conjectural on this house. We know that it was here and we're going to recreate it. I have not seen pictures to show me one way or another that there was something that was up there before. It's a visible change to the property, and the use of Trex on the decking is something that is not spelled out as being approvable in the standards that are local here. So that was something that I also wanted to have touched upon.
I guess my question is, to my fellow commissioners, is what is the impact of a denial? If we are pretending that this is coming before us right now, and we are saying no for whatever reason, what is the effect on the applicant?
I don't think we have to worry about that, really. Like, that shouldn't be in the weight of our decision, in theory, right?
It's a logical question. I think that comes up often, and I think that we're in an interesting situation at this moment, correct?
What's interesting for this is I've noticed it being built now for a while, because I drive down South Street, and I was like, oh, that's weird that didn't get asked. I'm curious about that, and I didn't say anything to anyone.
No, Dana, my understanding of how it would go is that then there's reversals that would need to be made on the property, right? I also just want to say that there's nothing that's, and I'm sorry for the feedback, it's really frustrating me right now, but there is nothing within our local ordinance that stops someone from reapplying immediately. So I just also want to say that it's never come up before, but if there was a denial, they could reach right back out and say, this is a different situation, I think, because the applicant is not here. But someone could reach right back out with this same exact application and submit it again the following month if they wanted to.
Well, that would be fine with me if the applicant would show up.
Yep. And he was here last month, and I do just
No,
want
he
to say,
was.
so
I know he
there,
was.
I just want to put that on the record as well.
I have a question about the application, maybe you can answer. Are we speaking only about the decking, like as in the flooring, or are we speaking also about the more fencing panels that are up?
Everything.
Everything, okay, thank you.
So in that light, I mean, it is very visible from the road and definitely changes the look of the building pretty, I mean, I noticed it, you know, driving every time I drive by it. So,
I would agree. I wouldn't personally find the decking to be offensive or anything. You don't see it from the road, but the railing, the fence, or whatever the hell it is definitely not attractive, in my opinion.
And it's not even the attractiveness, it's just that it just changes the character of the building, and I don't know if that's okay because it's so obviously not original. I don't know if that's a way to look at it, and I would look for some guidance on that.
Yeah, so, sorry, Christy, were you just about to speak?
Sure, I was just gonna say, I surprised myself in that I'm not as upset about the synthetic decking material, because I think if we were to allow a synthetic material, this might be a more appropriate place for it, not just because it's on the rear of the building, but because it's up away from the eye, from, you know, the streetscape. I instinctively find myself more okay with the material used for the decking than, I guess, the fencing panels. If there were, I don't know what my other solution would be for that, but.
Yeah, and it's almost like because it's so high up and it's fenced in, it's almost like an interior space that is in some ways maybe not our business, even though it is a little bit. I feel that same.
So I'd say a few things. I really want to make sure that as we're speaking, we're being very careful to not talk about our feelings. It's a very important thing that we need to follow the things that we are using as guideposts, like the Secretary of the Interior standards or the local historic district standards and guidelines. Secondly, this is an interesting case because, first of all, South Street is a one-way street, so that's the only way you're ever going to drive down it, ever. I don't know how often people are walking on the street and that's when they notice it, or if when they're driving down the street they notice it, because it's the first thing that you see when you turn onto South Street. Third of all, I don't know if we're all aware, but we don't have a picture, but this is the property that right next to it, the other house just burned down. So you would not have been able to, and this is just something that I thought about, without the loss of that home, this would not be visible at all because it would be hidden by the other property. The last thing that I'll kind of say, and I don't know how much bearing that has on it, but the streetscape surrounding this building has changed so drastically. We have the parking lot, two parcels to the west, and then one parcel to the west, we have this empty lot. Looking at that area on the property, without any certainty, it does not surprise me but that there would have been some kind of deck up there in the past, especially because there's a door that leads to it. So I don't doubt that at some point there was something up there. We just don't know what it can look like.
So would it be fair to say then that section of the building is an original section of the property, or that section of the building was an addition at some point to the principal?
I'm not sure. I haven't been able to determine that one way or another looking at footprints of maps to say, was this an original section of the building or not?
I think your point that it would not have been visible at all if that house had not burned is a very great point. I'm sure when they started the project that was in their minds as well. I mean, not to put on them what they're thinking or anything, but yeah, that is a great point. That house burning and being torn down really changed that whole street.
And the house is gone now, so I mean, maybe it's a moot point, but I think that this, again, we can see what losing properties does to the streetscape. It does drastically change the rhythm that we have with properties.
I guess I'm a little uncomfortable making the argument for the applicant. My previous statement was not in any way intended to punish the applicant. It's more that when the applicant is here, the applicant knows more about the project and can share information with us about how it came about to be the way it is, that I feel uncomfortable speculating about. So I guess my preference would be to move to deny it, allow, in conversations with the applicant, remind the applicant can put in an application and appear at the next meeting and present more information to the commission. That'd be my preference.
Yeah, and I think I really want to, what Luis just said too, like the idea of we typically are approving, we just approved something today that was in the rear of the home. It's not, affecting the function, or it's not and boom, all of a sudden a big change happens, a building goes away, and now that's a highly visible section. So it's something for us to bear in mind when we're making these decisions in the future. Definitely a good point for sure.
Okay, that being said, do I have a motion to either approve or disapprove this application?
And so the motion should be made in the affirmative, and then the way that you vote would dictate what the motion's outcome would be. In other words, if someone was making a motion who sought to approve it, they would say, I move to approve. And if someone was making a motion who sought to deny it, they would still say that I approve, but upon voting, they would say no, if that makes sense.
So someone could just propose voting on it as written, and then we could vote no, just to make it easy.
I'll do that. I'll move to approve the alteration of the third rear porch as presented, as being consistent with guidelines, standards. Which ones? 6 and 7? Is that it?
Can someone give them to Dana for the denial? It is important.
What are they? 1, 2, 3. Is being consistent with standards 1, 2, 9, and 10.
Do I have a second?
I will second.
All right, and then could I have a roll call vote? And I think James is abstaining, so.
Christie?
Yes.
Dana?
No.
Dan?
Yes.
Eric?
No.
Okay, so I'll be in touch with the applicant after the meeting to let him know about the outcome of this. And that concludes this portion of the meeting for this evening.
That was a good one. There was a lot of weird ones on that.
There was. I do just want to touch lightly on the preservation, or my report here. Not a lot, because I haven't had anything really this month. We just got into the new year, so nothing's really happened yet. I do want to continue to let people know that the Historic Preservation Network's annual conference is in May of this year. It's the 8th through the 11th of May. And also remind you that your sister or brother commission here in the city, the Historic Preservation Commission, who maybe this year we'll have like a dual training so you guys can both be aware of each other's existence. They have appropriated enough money for all of you to attend that conference as well for a portion of it. The HPC is the arm of preservation in the city of Kalamazoo that does have funds appropriated to it, so be mindful of that. As we get closer, I can continue to provide you details. I went through and set aside enough money for people to attend a la carte, so I picked out tracks to go to, attending tours or some of the more involved stuff you guys would be you'd have to pay for your own, but you can at least attend some of the stuff, and that would be paid for by the Historic Preservation Commission. So just wanted to let you guys know that. And that's all that I have for this.
Then, I guess if there's nothing else, it is.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Yeah.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I
All right, thanks.